Hello and welcome back to the Sky Mobile Transfer Show, where we are live for the next 45 minutes, maybe an hour or so, to discuss all the events going on deadline day throughout the whole of Europe and the wider world as well, and to discuss all the breaking news. We've got a hell of a lineup for you guys. We've got Liaz Bazidi, Man United fan and great content creator. How are you doing, Liaz?
I appreciate the kind words, man. I'm not so well in terms of the Man United aspect, but we're hanging in there, man, honestly.
We've got a lot to discuss Man United-wise and Spurs-wise, and Fouad Kadani, content superstar, is back. Fouad, how are you doing?
Very good, very good.
It has been a hell of a day.
Picked up my first 3 points in a while on the weekend. Some new signings coming in. It's all looking different.
It is looking up. I mean, let's get straight into that. Matias Tell has now joined Spurs. It's been a U-turn. It's been on, it's been off, but he is now going to be a Spurs player. What do you make of this signing?
Honestly, one that we need very, very much, and I'm actually happy, despite obviously a bit of back and forth. And I think earlier in this week, I was getting ready for Saturday Social, trying to build what players we need to sign for the season, and he was one I kept putting in and out. And I think in terms of profile, he addresses a lot of position. We need depth in terms of wide areas, cover for Solanke in the number 9 position. I feel like Richarlison's fitness hasn't really been available. Quick, strong, in my opinion, good technically. I feel like he has a lot to offer, but he hasn't been given a chance to show it. And similar situation with what Gravenberch had at Bayern Munich, where he maybe went there a little bit too early in his career, hadn't really even broken through at Rennes properly when he initially made his debut. And at Bayern Munich, he hasn't really got that chance with obviously Harry Kane, our former boy, going back there. But it's almost like a you scratch my back, I scratch your back situation, I guess. So, and I understand kind of getting him in on a loan. 60 million is a lot. And in a couple of days when that deal was happening, I was thinking it's a bit of a gamble on an unknown quantity. So I think a loan is good for both parties. It allows him to get first team football and kind of really maybe assess his options again in the summer. But then for us as well, it gives us something, a spark plug essentially for the second half of the season. And I think, look, the league, it is what it is. We are where we are. I think we're going to just try and make the best of it. But he can really be important in those later cup rounds. And I think that's where I'm kind of looking at. Can he come in and make the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of his game time at Spurs. He seemingly favoured Man United, maybe because he thought there was more chance of being a starter there. Dominic Solanke's obviously played pretty well this season. Were you concerned at all that he did seem to favour Man United and yet has ended up at Spurs, or is that just the way it works?
I think that's par for the course in terms of profile of the club. I think players always fall in love with the idea of being the guys to bring United back. But I think over the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of players that have maybe been misled by going there. And I think the Arsenal one was an interesting one, and I was quite surprised they didn't really make a push for it, considering they need to freshen up their attack. Loan seems a low-risk move. And I think that one was maybe one I thought if they make a bid, there's no chance we're in it. But I think looking at the two situations, you're splitting hairs between United and Spurs at the moment. So I don't know what we did. I think maybe Daniel Levy obviously landing in Munich and maybe showing the kind of face-to-face interest maybe made a little bit of a difference. But it'll be interesting. I think he's going to come in and straight away start games. I don't think there's going to be any questions about him and Solanke. I think he'll take one of the wide positions. I think at the moment, Kulusevski's come inside into the midfield. Brennan Johnson's the only right-wing option. On the left, of course, we've had Mikey Moore come through. Odegaard has shown a little bit of ability at the start before he got injured. We've still got Timo Werner as well. But I imagine he'll get minutes there, and especially considering we're still in all the cups, there'll be plenty of minutes to go around as well.
Fair enough. Right, Liaz, let's talk about it from a Man United perspective, because it was reported that he wanted to go to Man United. It didn't feel like you guys maybe had the finances to even pull off a move. How devastated are you that, you know, on the back of Højlund and Xerxes being dropped yesterday for Kobbie Mainoo playing as a false 9, as we record this at 5:25, you still haven't brought in a forward?
I think it just kind of summarizes the lack of strategy and the lack of clarity around the strategy at Manchester United this entire window. A team that yesterday, as you said, lined up with Kobbie Mainoo up front. In my opinion, that's a statement from the manager saying, I don't rate the two center forwards that I basically adopted when I came into the club. Kobbie Mainoo is who I'm going for up front, a guy who's never played center forward at a professional level. Please bring me reinforcements up front. The club this window have let go of Rashford on a loan. They've let go of Antony on a loan. They let go of Jadon Sancho on an original loan without bringing any replacement for either of those three players. We already have one of the weakest attacks in the Premier League. Statistically, on the eye, however way you want to slice it. To weaken it even further and not bring anybody through the door makes absolutely zero sense to me. So Would Matias Tell have been the savior for Man United? Probably not, right? We've seen so many players with bigger profiles, maybe even more talented than Tell, come here and fail. But it's just the lack of clarity about what this club wants to do. The way I'm almost reading the situation at Man United is this season doesn't matter. Like, we're in a situation right now where we're 13th place. We're struggling to create chances. We're struggling to put the ball in the back of the net, and we're letting guys go, and no one's coming in the other way. What do we want to do with the season then? Are we basically just happy to kind of float for the remainder of the season, get to the summer, and hope things just fix themselves then? If that's the case, let us know, and then we'll stop being investing in the season. But then what? You guys are going to increase the ticket prices as well too. So you're going to increase the ticket prices for a team that you have no intention of strengthening on the pitch. At the moment right now for United, it's not devastating because Mathys Tel, he's a good talent. He's a good prospect. I'm sure, for his own sake, I hope he has a good time at Spurs, honestly. But it's more so what it represents rather than the player itself. For United right now, it's a very bleak time to be a fan.
I mean, I don't want to stick the knife in even further, but it has just been announced that Lisandro Martinez has done his ACL. He's going to be out for the entire season as well. That is a big injury.
When it rains, it pours, man. And when it rains, it pours. I think everybody who saw the injury in live time yesterday, the minute he went down, you always know when a player goes down without any contact and he's grabbing his knee, for example, it's always spells one thing. And for him, it's particularly devastating because this is a player that just a few years ago, I think he tore his ACL. It was a big knee injury as well, too, that kept him out for a long period of time. And as a big Lisandro Martinez fan, I have no problem in saying that it was evident that he was coming back from an injury. This past 18 months for him, or the past, I would say 6 months, because he missed a lot of last season, has been really tough on him. Like, he's struggled to really find the sharpness that he originally had when he joined the club. And I actually think the last few games, in amongst this bad spell for United, he's actually looked like somebody who looks pretty decent in the system. Like, he can actually play in this 3-back. And you can't say that about a lot of United players. Yeah. So for him, I feel for him a lot because it looked like he was finally getting over that initial knee injury, and to suffer another one in such a short amount of time. You worry about him now. Obviously, he's going to miss the rest of the season, and we'll see how much of next year. But even going forward for his career, what does this look like for Lisandro Martinez? I'm worried.
I want to come back to you about and talk about Ruben Amorim as well, but it's actually both of your clubs are in a situation where there has been doubts about your managers. Fuad, where are you at with Ange Postecoglou? Do you feel like he's not been given the tools to succeed? Are you frustrated with what Daniel Levy has left him?
100%. I think every fan has pretty much shown that, I think, at every game this season. I think even when you look at the summer, we gave him a lot of youngsters, 18-year-olds that were going to come in and maybe not players that were going to make the difference straight away. And I think as much as similarly over there, like, we got rid of a lot of players, whether that be skips, winks. There was a lot of dead weight at the club, and I think we done really well in clearing it out. But in terms of bringing in ready-made replacements, I think we left him short there. And I think as this season has gone on, this was meant to be the second season where we see a bit of evolution. We allow Ange to really build this team in his vision. And I think stylistically he's tried to, but he doesn't have the players there. And I think a lot of frustration with him has been, okay, if you don't have the players, how can you adjust your style a little bit? How can we not be so vulnerable defensively? How can the high line not leave us susceptibly? And I think that there has been improvements definitely in some areas, but then too many times this season we've conceded goals from crosses, sloppy miscommunications in the defence. So you just think one or two signings earlier in the window could have maybe stopped the bleeding a little bit more. But I think the cups this season have definitely papered over the cracks because 13 losses in 23 games, I don't think that is acceptable in any circumstance. And when you look at kind of Spurs' league form, I don't think we've been this low in the table for about 15 years or so. Do you know what I mean? Since Harry Redknapp took over from Juan de Ramos. So it really has gotten to a point where even me, who was the most Ange in, if you like, I even started to question it and think, is this too much for him? Can he really keep doing this and get away with it? And I think similarly, midweek, he had the academy kids kind of turn up and it gives you, oh, you know what? We might have something to look forward to. Again, then we win away at Brentford, get our first away when you're kind of thinking, hold on.
The tide is turning.
Here we go again.
They pulled me back in, as they say. So it's kind of interesting. But at the moment, I've said, I think this season he's definitely living on the cups. And I don't know what it is, but I just have a feeling there's one coming. I can't tell you which one it is, but I just have a sneaky, weird feeling that this league season is just, okay, forget it, write it off. But in the cups, I just feel like there's something there. There's an opportunity for us to go out this season. And if he does deliver that, I mean, all is forgiven, I think.
Okay. Okay, I mean, Europa League will be absolutely massive for both your clubs. You got through to the last 16 automatically. I mean, Liaz, where are we at with Amorim as well? Because obviously he came in with such a huge reputation. He took a big risk leaving Sporting CP. They look set for another league title, and we haven't really seen the improvement many people expected to.
Look, the United fan base in general, I typically tend to view them as one that is very patient with the manager. I think more than a lot of clubs. I even look at Erik ten Hag, who finished 8th place last year, and the fans wrote a petition to the board to keep him. Like, they stick by their manager, but even the most diehard fans are looking at Amorim and saying, we believe in him, we want to back him, but where's the clarity? Like, can this formation work? Are you flexible enough? I'm in a position here, right, where I feel like the frustration is misguided. Whatever you want to say about Ruben Amorim and his tactics, if you think he should switch it up, if you think he's not flexible enough, if you think he's even good enough, I just really struggle to put a lot of the blame on him, because this is a manager that the entirety of his, by the way, very short career, but the entirety of his career has played one way. It's playing 3 at the back, and he's had nothing but success doing it. The club went to him midway through the season, begged him to come to play his way, realizing at the same time that the current squad had about maybe a handful of players that could actually play the way he wants to play. They are not backing him financially. They brought him in one wing back who's a relative novice at this point. He hasn't really proven anything longer than a year. And fans are getting onto the manager for that, saying that he should change his style. I'm sorry, we hired him to play his style. If you're upset about that, you should be upset at the board. You should be upset at the people that recruited Ruben Amorim. So, personally, I don't know if Ruben Amorim is the right guy for Man United. I don't know if he's the guy that's going to bring us back. I have no clue. He could very well not be. But I find it hard to blame anything on him at the current moment, because I feel like he's been handed a rotten hand of cards, a hand of cards that even last year, by the way, were fortunate to finish 8th. All the underlying metrics last year had us around 14th to 16th place. That was under a system that they were recruited for. They were bought to play Erik ten Hag style play, and they weren't good enough then. Now, they've already shown they're not good enough. And now they're playing a system that they have no idea how to play.
Yeah.
How can you really blame the manager for that? Could he be doing a little better? Absolutely. The form that we've shown in the last few weeks, 2 wins and 7 at Old Trafford, that's not good enough. But let's look at the bigger picture here. I think there's much bigger issues than Ruben Amorim. That's just me personally.
And I think that's a situation for almost both managers. It's like both fan bases feel like the managers could be doing more, because it's like, even with Ange, we like that he plays attacking football, but all we want is a bit of balance. Don't be so leaky at the back. And at the same time, you understand that there's circumstances out of his control, whether that's recruitment with the board, and that's recruitment over the past couple of years. You can't just now all of a sudden pin that on a manager. And I think when Ange was coming in, we knew it was going to be a long-term project. So now 18 months in, do we all of a sudden check that out and start again?
Well, you know what's even worse for us, right? At least Ange brought in a few of the guys that he thought he could base his system around. Yes, some of them have been injured, but a guy like Mickey van de Ven is crucial to the way he wants to play. A guy like Dominic Solanke was crucial to the way he wanted to play. Ruben Amorim is even more specific in what he needs, because he's completely changing the way Man United want to play, like drastically. And he's brought in one player who hasn't even played a game yet. Everybody else has shown they can't do it. Now, my frustration lies with the board here, because this group of players, right, you can talk about being patient all you want. The proof's in the pudding. 3 months in with Ruben Amorim, they have shown they're not going to get this system. These players can't do it. Now, the solution to that should be, how can we get players that can improve it and work with what he's got? We haven't made any kind of business. And that's why when you talk about a Matias Tell, for example, okay, you can ask about whether he's ready-made at the moment, whether he's scored enough goals, whether he can improve us right away, but when a player wants to join you and he's available clearly on a loan with no option to buy, no obligation to buy whatsoever, it's just a hard loan, and you turn that down, that it just makes me question what the strategy is.
The clubs definitely, as in the club's players, are definitely under pressure as well, because Man United is one of those teams where the fans as a group like to put all the blame on one specific player. We've seen it with Pogba, we've seen it with Rashford, we've seen it with Anthony, we've seen it with Sancho. All these players have now left the club, and what is left is not particularly impressive in terms of a playing squad. So it's going to be fascinating to see where they turn to next, because I totally agree with you. It's been really underwhelming for a long time at Man United, and you can't just carry on firing managers. You've eventually got to stick with one of them.
You know, the worst thing as well, too, is a lot of those players you just named, I'll be honest, a lot of those players, like I think of a player like Fred, who over the course of his Man United career, I was consistently saying, I don't think this guy's good enough for the club. I look at what we've replaced him with, and I'm not trying to rewrite Fred's time at Man United, but he's better than a lot of what we're left with. A player like Paul Pogba, who was lambasted throughout his time in the Premier League, and look, Paul Pogba was not the most consistent player. I get that. Man United fans, if Paul Pogba at Man United walked through the door right now, we think we had our savior right now.
Yeah.
That's how low the standard has dropped. So we're chasing players out, but the players we're bringing in return aren't an improvement whatsoever.
I mean, Pogba is still available on a free.
He is?
Look at guys like
closes in a couple of hours.
the strikers we've lost in the last few windows. We killed Martial. We got onto Cristiano.
Yeah.
We have 2 strikers now that neither of them can get a game over Kobbie Mainoo. Like, it's crazy how low the standards have fallen at this club.
It is crazy. We've got some breaking news that PSV are closing in on a loan deal for Tyrell Malacia as well. Obviously had so many injuries issues at Man United. Hopefully he stays fit. Guys, we need to talk about some done deals as well. We'll probably come back to Spurs and Man United as well. But Nico Gonzalez has joined Man City.
Wow.
Fuad, let's talk about Man City's midfield and whether Nico Gonzalez is the answer, because it's been clear since Rodri's absence that it just lacks a lot of physicality and they get steamrolled through the centre of that park. Kovacic is a great midfielder in certain roles, but I think is not suited to that role.
Yeah.
They needed to strengthen in this place, didn't they?
100%. I feel like even Bernardo, who at 30 years old looks like he's 40 at this point, his legs aren't really there. Kevin De Bruyne doesn't look like he could play 2 games a week. Nunez has pretty much become a fullback. It's been almost a real eye-opening season for how much work and how much neglect City have done in the transfer market, to be honest, and kind of over-reliance on a lot of their big stars over the past couple of years. And those guys have set a standard of consistency that, listen, you probably don't even want to sign in replacements when they're playing at that level. But you also do need to plan for the future. And I think City maybe ignored that a little bit. And now you're looking at it where some of the new guys they're bringing in, there's a lot of responsibility on them to come in and straight away start firing, whether that be Kusanov, whether that be Rice. And I don't know, this is now another midfielder that's come in. He's going to be expected to come in and straight away plug that gap, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. So I think it's going to take a lot more than just one signing. I think there needs to be an overhaul in that team, and I think players of character is the most important thing. I think it's not just ability. I think Pep has shown players with ability can get you far, but I think one thing City are missing is leaders. And I think this next generation, if there's one thing that I remember Chelsea happened, they had that core group of leaders. And then as they all got phased out, all of a sudden it just became a squad of now kids, essentially, all inexperienced. And you don't want that with City, especially considering the kind of legacy that they've left over the past 5-6 years. Fernandinho, Kompany, Kevin De Bruyne, all these senior guys to... Who's next to take on the mantle? Because Walker's just been the first captain now walking out of the door. I don't know who those next leaders are. Is it going to be Haaland and Foden? Because the way they're performing this season, I don't know if they're ready to kind of carry that mantle just yet. So, I don't know.
It's an interesting one, isn't it, Nico Gonzalez? Because, I mean, he's 6'2", which adds a certain physicality to the middle of the park, which they have lacked this year as well. But this is a guy that Barcelona sold for €8.5 million. I think it was 18 months ago.
Yeah. After
a loan at Valencia where he was pretty unimpressive. And look, his numbers this season are vastly improved. He's grabbed a lot of goals and assists from the centre of the park and at FC Porto, but there's just no way Nico Gonzalez was their top, even in their top 3 midfield targets. I just don't believe it. And I actually think the big winners of this deal, because they had a 40% sell-on clause, are actually Barcelona. They've earned another 23 million off a player they sold for 8.5. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And Lies, like Nico Gonzalez looked like a talent at Barcelona, looked like he was going to have a career at a top 5 league club. But I don't think back then people were talking about him being like, this is a future Man City level player.
No, I don't think so, but environment is key as well. And I think since he's come to Porto, he's massively improved his level. And I actually think it's a really good signing, personally. I agree with you. They 1,000% need a squad overhaul, but more importantly, a midfield overhaul. Like the signings of Marmoush, the signings of Kusanov, Vitor Rice, they've all been impressive for numerous reasons, but I didn't really feel like any of them addressed the major concern for Manchester City this season, which is the middle of the park. And we talked about Rodri for large stretches of the season. It's very clear that this is more than just a lack of Rodri. The Manchester City midfield has been, as you said, neglected, and it is deteriorating right in front of our eyes. The fact that they have a top 5 oldest squad in the league proves that. And when you look at the numbers even past that, Manchester City lead the league in terms, or they're in the top 5, of teams that have conceded the most transitions.
Yeah.
They are conceding transitions for fun. It's not just the amount of chances they're creating, it's the amount of the amount of chances they're conceding, It's about the amount of big chances that they're conceding. They look vulnerable every single time a team has a bit more physicality to them. And that's why I do think this is a good start to improving their team, because the other guys, they will improve them, but the middle of the park had to be addressed. You saw it yesterday against Arsenal. 6'2", he's very progressive as well. He's very good at carrying the ball. I think his defensive numbers, they're a little... For what he looks like, you'd expect him to be a much better defensive player.
Yeah.
But I think at Manchester City, playing under Pep as well too, has played that position for so many years as well too. And you typically look at the likes of Rodri, Busquets, Fernandinho. He knows how to identify that position of the pitch. And it's probably a signing that they should have made before Rodri even went down, because the fact that they never had a deputy to him that was even capable of fulfilling half the role he did ultimately led to a lot of the problems this year.
And I think that's one concern as well, is you do have to be cautious of when Rodri does come back from his injury, he might not be the same. Like, we've only seen Virgil get back to his levels, was it last season? It took him about a season or so to really flesh out. Wirtz is the only kind of freak of nature I've ever seen come back from an ACL injury and just pick up be better than where he was last time. But I think it is an important signing. I think with City as well, they've always gone for, I don't want to say big names. They've always got, I think Haaland is like the only big name I can kind of think of. They always go for these kind of smart gems. They never really break the bank. Could he be one kind of under the radar that turns out to be really good? It'll be interesting.
I think the fact you can play as a 6 and an 8 as well is helpful, because who wants to be signed as a pure 6 to back up Rodri when he is fit as well? That's why it's so difficult for these top clubs. You know, Arsenal have been criticised for not signing a backup to Saka, but it's such a difficult role unless you're going to sign a forward that can play in multiple positions.
That's the one. And
who wants to play? Even wants to be backup?
I think for every position when you're talking about that, you just need somebody that can occupy numerous positions, and then if a big injury happens, okay, they're good for that position. A guy like, well, he was linked for them for a while, and I'm not trying to say like, oh, he's going to end up going there, but Bruno Guimaraes was someone that was really linked at the City at times. He's an unbelievable 8. Like, he's all action. For me, he checks every single box. But also, if a huge injury were to happen to Rodri, he would have been a guy that could just play in the 6. Obviously, Newcastle have him, and I'm not trying to create transfer rumors. Brilliant player, brilliant fit there. But yeah, that's exactly what they're going to hope that Nico Gonzalez can kind of fill at City. Yeah,
absolutely right. Next one to talk about, Marco Asensio going to Aston Villa. Now, Fuad, Aston Villa have had a pretty crazy end to this window. Marcus Rashford going there, Marco Asensio looking like he's joining there on loan as well.
2017, by the way. Asensio and Rashford at Villa.
Absolutely mad. I love Marco Asensio. I know he's had his injury issues, but there's a real talent there.
Aston Villa have basically snatched Tottenham's top 6 chain. Can't lie to you. They're finishing top 4. They're doing well in the Champions League qualifying. I think Unai Emery, the way he's moved Villa up this Premier League table, these are the types of players they should be going for. And it may sound crazy, but Asensio's stock has fallen a little bit. I think PSG even signed him as a false 9 initially, but he hasn't really been getting any minutes. And obviously with Kvara coming in, there was always going to be a fall guy. I think, could he come in and play a number of positions and offer just something a little bit different? I think it's a good signing in terms of depth. I don't know how many starting minutes he'll get, because I do think they are very well stacked. I think Rashford is the more interesting one, where I'm really interested to see how he kind of reacts mentally and kind of just plays with a chip on his shoulder is what I hope to see, because I don't know whether he's kind of thinking long term, I want to stay here because Aston Villa looks like the trajectory of it is going upwards, or if he's maybe thinking, you know, I can use the 6 months as a platform to kind of sell myself.
There's an option to buy him at the end of the deal.
40 million.
Yeah, which, I mean, if he really performs, Rashford for 40 million is probably a no-brainer. If he shows Villa what he can do.
That's a bargain in my opinion. But I think it really speaks to the trajectory of Villa are on, and you have to give massive credit to Unai Emery and Monchi is the sporting director as well, in terms of the recruitment that they've done over the past 2 years. Tielemans on a free, Onana, the depth that they've brought in multiple positions. Pau Torres, who was a signing when initially he came in, I was looking at it like, he is not built for the Premier League, and he has shut every doubter up. So they have had more hits than misses, and listen, we'll see how these two turn out now.
Yeah.
Loans as well, so it's low risk.
Sure. It's a good turnaround, actually, I think, from a summer business, which I think slightly flattered to deceive. Like, only Onana of their summer business has really been a regular. Matson's not really been. Philigine's already been moved on. They signed Berenachea and Iling Jr. And obviously they were trying to deal with PSR concerns. But this does feel like John Duran's departure, who didn't seem very happy being second string. And they've sold him to Saudi Arabia, where he's kind of out of sight, out of mind for a good fee, and then used that to sign 2 players who probably have, you know, points to prove in Asensio and Rashford. I think that's quite an exciting attacking, like, sort of regeneration, as it were. And Leon Bailey's form this season, without Moussa Diaby's pushing him, probably hasn't been as good as well. So if Asensio can get the best out of Leon Bailey as well, Liez, I think that's exciting. But from a Man United perspective, were you just happy to see this saga of Rashford end? And I suppose you must wish him all the best.
Yeah, of course, I wish him all the best. I remember the first game I ever went to Old Trafford was Marcus Rashford's debut against Midtjylland. And then the next game I went to go to Old Trafford was his debut against Arsenal. So I watched him grow from a boy to a man in front of my very eyes. I 1000% wish him the best. I hope that he can kind of not only rediscover his form, but rediscover his smile, because he has looked like a player with the world burdening his shoulders over the last 2 years. Wayne Rooney even came out and said it recently that this is a player that needs to leave United for his own sake, and I completely agree with it. I think it was a marriage that needed to end, and I think Rashford will probably have a good time at Villa because he's playing under a top manager. Unai Emery is a world-class manager. He's one of the best out there, and it speaks to the fact that Villa can attract these kinds of names. It helps as well having a great sporting director, but the fact that Unai Emery is at the helm, players want to play for a manager like that. And let's hope that Man United can live without him as well too, because I think he's still the third top scorer in the league for Man United, even though he hasn't played the last month. Asensio is an interesting one. I mean, both of these guys are really at a standstill in their career, and they have been for a few years. Asensio, I think even his last few years at Real Madrid was really struggling to kind of kickstart, and because he had some injuries, let's be real.
ACL.
Yeah, and he was a player that really relied, in my opinion, when he first burst onto the scene, cut like that little burst of pace to unleash those crazy strikes in the top corner. And I think that loss of the burst that he once had has really hampered his game. And I don't think he's ever really recovered from that to reach the potential that we once thought he had. But let's see how they both do. I think Rashford, for me, is definitely the more interesting one, not even just as a United fan, because I think the threat that Villa pose in transition, they are one of the scariest teams when the ball's in front of them and they're running at goal. Watkins, Morgan Rogers, you add Marcus Rashford to that, who has shown in his Premier League career that in transition, he's one of the scariest players in the league when he's actually on it. That has the potential to really be a good move for Villa.
Just a tandem of the Watkins hold-up with Rashford's runs in behind, it just gives you this kind of dynamic, a different dynamic that they didn't have before, and they lost with Diallo, to be fair.
I think the most important thing for Rashford, honestly, is just going there, putting his head down and getting to work and really making the most out of this opportunity, because I do also think if it doesn't work at Villa, then he's really at a standstill in his career. This move, he has to really make the most out of it. But when I look at Unai Emery, when I look at the feel-good factor at Villa, they're playing in the Champions League. He'll have a good support system around him. And I think being out of the Man United limelight will be big for him. I expect him to have a good time there.
Yeah, absolutely. The way they bait teams onto them and leave space in behind,
I think it's made
Tielemans' long balls.
I think
it could be great. Let's talk about a player that's leaving the Premier League. Joao Felix going to Milan on loan, €5 million apparently. They've lost Morata, who's gone to Galatasaray. They brought in Santiago Jimenez from Feyenoord, who personally I'm very excited for.
That's an interesting one.
But Joao Felix going to Milan, again, it feels like he's not going to be necessarily a guaranteed starter, Liaz.
I need to know who represents Joao Felix, and I need to take their job because they've done a lousy job of it the last 8 years.
Bad move after bad move.
Yeah, first of all, I look at Chelsea here, right? Didn't they spend, what, 50, was it around 50 million for him?
It was 40, around 45.
Yeah, whatever, in that ballpark,
to get
right?
Conor Gallagher out, and then they bring in Joao Felix, don't really use him, and they loan him 6 months later.
It just makes no sense whatsoever. But as for Joao Felix, I mean, you talk about a player at a standstill in his career. This guy needs to figure out what the hell he is, first of all, before anything, talking about the move or whatever. What kind of player are you? I always tell Fuad, right, the way that some people perceive Eden Hazard on Twitter in terms of he's this player that just does pirouettes and he wasn't effective or whatever, is actually the way I kind of view Joao Felix. There isn't enough impact on football games at the highest level in his game. I don't think he's impacted football games at the highest level since he was 18 at Benfica. And it's been... When was Benfica?
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
7 years ago.
2019, did he join there?
7 years ago. Since then, he's went to Atletico Madrid under Diego Simeone, who has a track record, by the way, of getting the best out of his forwards. We all gave him the benefit of the doubt and said, the system, the style of play doesn't really suit him. He went to Chelsea the first go-around. For me, he was a disappointment the first time around. People were gassing it up. I thought it was a disappointment. Goes to Barcelona, flatters to deceive largely.
I thought he was even at Barcelona.
Yeah. Because it's a forgettable period. Comes back to Chelsea, has been practically a non-factor this season. And now he's going to AC Milan, where, I'll be real, I don't really know what to expect. Because again, what kind of player are you? Where are you going to fit in all of that? Are you a creator? Are you a goal scorer? Are you a guy that just looks good at the end of compilations? I'm not sure with Joao Felix anymore. And this was all acceptable talk when he was 21, 22 years old. I think he's at a point in his career now where if you don't know what kind of player you are, you're not really worth talking about as much as we do.
Kind of reminds me of yesteryear. Some kids will remember, or some old people like me, Ricardo Quaresma, where a player with all the ability and you see flashes of it and think, wow, he can be special if he wants to be. But for some reason, they just never seem to connect the dots. And he is just one where I'm just thinking, at this point in your career, I genuinely can't look at one good move you've had. And then I don't know what the future holds for him. This AC Milan move, now I'm looking at it, you've got Pulisic, Reinders and Rafael Leao in that behind the attacker. I'm like, they've pretty much been their best players this season.
Yeah.
You're going there and essentially going to be another squad player. So who is advising these moves, and why are you not going somewhere where you are going to be the absolute number one starter, maybe even be the big fish in a small pond, take that step back, something like what Isco's done at Sevilla or Betis, where it's like, we just get to enjoy you again, and there isn't that pressure of Joao Felix needs to deliver a title or something. And I just think, has he once again pegged himself into this corner where it's just, now the pressure's going to be on him, and if he comes back in 6 months' time with another ineffective loan spell, what have Chelsea got on their hands? It's just another problem.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Milan's recent transfer hits, like Fofana, Reinders, etc., they've been players on the come-up. It just doesn't feel very recent Milan. Or, I mean, the Milan fans I follow on Twitter are really frustrated with their American owners, to say the least. So, Joao Felix feels like another miss. But let's see what happens there. Fuad, let's talk about a deal that has been rejected outright. Spurs going in for Mark Gehi in the final few days of the January transfer window. This doesn't feel like it was ever going to happen.
What's wrong with you guys, man? Honestly, what were you thinking?
You know, sometimes you just have to try things. And I feel like we was at a stage where I think we'd received a lot of rejections, and it was like, you know what? Let's just see what we can bid out
Let's
there.
just get the ultimate rejection out the way.
Let's just, why not? And I think Gehi, I mean, he's got a year and a half left on his contract, if I'm not mistaken. So Palace are going to be in a situation in the summer where they're maybe going to be forced to sell, and I think we maybe tried to jump the queue a little bit there. The only problem is I don't think right now we're as an exciting prospect, so I don't think Guehi would really push the move, considering he's captain there as well. He had a big move in the summer to Newcastle as well, which got rejected, and I think he's just been content kind of being at Palace. And listen, he's someone who had a massive Euros last year as well. I think he could actually play for a top side, so I see why Palace have rejected the bid, and of course he's crucial to their hopes as well if they're going to have any success this season. But no surprise for me that we did manage to get Kevin Danso through the door, so at least someone else did come in.
For me, it felt like Levy wanted to be appearing to make big moves.
Yeah.
Like, it's so performative. That's never going to be accepted.
That's how I felt initially the Tell bid, to be fair, was. I thought 60 million, where did we pull this out of the back of the sofa all of a sudden? Because I didn't know we had money, and then now all of a sudden we're bidding for Tell, but I was like, this is a PR move to look like, oh, look, we tried to sign wingers. And you could say the Guehi one was probably the same for the centre-back, but now Tell's here on a loan, Kevin Danso's through the door. I still don't think
happy
it's
with Danso?
enough. I think very happy, if I'm honest. He's someone who I actually thought West Ham, Wolves, the fact that when they lost Kilman, I thought he seems a prototypical perfect Premier League player, in my opinion. I think very underrated on the ball as well. Perfect cover, I think, for what we have at the moment. Can provide, has the physicality to kind of cover for Van der Ven when needed. Maybe not as quick, but then also just has that rough and tumble about Romero as well. So I'm happy.
He's a much better deputy than Dragusin was in terms of
100%.
profile. Like whoever scouted that guy for an Ange system needs to be fired. But yeah, I'm being dead serious. Like whoever scouted him for Spurs, honestly, that's one of the worst recruitments we've seen in the Premier League. Danso seems like a better fit for when either of them are injured. Which, when you look at the last year, they're injured quite a bit. But all of this really just screams for me desperation from Spurs in terms of they are trying to just fix the situation that they can any way they can. They went for Tomori, they went for Tell, they went for Danso. They're not going for Guehi. They're just trying to put band-aids over the wound. And in a way, I kind of rate it because it is a crisis at Spurs at the moment. They are having their worst season in forever. I'm going to bring it back to United, but I wish we had that kind of urgency about our situation because we're similarly lingering in the bottom half, have a very thin attack. We need players, and we just kind of seem content with it. So you guys are desperate. Let's call it what it is, but I rate the desperation. There's an urgency to get yourselves out of that situation.
All very last minute, but yeah, you are right. They are at least making moves. Let's talk about another done deal. Ben Chilwell's gone to Crystal Palace, Liège. He's still only 28, but he's obviously not played any football for the last 6 months. He's had a number of injury issues. This is just, you want to see him get back to somewhere close to his best because this was a really talented player.
At 1,100%. First of all, I rate him a lot. The fact that he has basically been in exile for the last 6 months and didn't say a word about it. I rate that 100%. Great professionalism from him there. And I hope he does really well at Crystal Palace because, like you said, there was a point with Ben Chilwell where he was looking like one of the best left backs in Europe in that period where Chelsea were winning the Champions League and the Club World Cup. Him and Reece James were forming the best attacking fullback duo on the planet at that point. So I hope that he does kind of return to the best. But also, if we're being honest here, the injuries have really taken a toll on him. And I think Ben Chilwell was a player that relied on his burst of speed, overlapping, getting himself in attacking positions. And I don't think he's ever quite been the same since the injury. But let's hope that a new environment, a new change of life. I mean, he's going to be competing with Tyreek Mitchell over on that left-hand side. I think he's more of an attacking option out of the two. And when you look at Munoz on the other side, I think Chilwell is more that kind of mold. So let's see. For his own sake, I do hope he kind of gets to a level close to his best. But
and I do think it's almost like yin and yang, where you've got Tyreek Mitchell, who's very good defensively. He's good in attack, and then depending on kind of the game, because there are some games where Glasnow's obviously gone for the back five and with the wing backs, so him and Munoz could work very well as a tandem in the wing back pairing. But I think, as you said, his stock has kind of fallen over the years. I think his aim should be to try and just get back in that England picture almost. That left-back position hasn't really been claimed. You've got Lewis Skelly, you've got Hall there on the come-up, and they're looking like two serious contenders. But he is obviously that big name that was always there. Palace, I actually think it's a coup for them as well. I think it's a loan deal, low risk for them. I think get him in, see if he's got that chip on his shoulder. Similarly, I think there's quite a few players making moves like that.
That's January transfer window for you, man. It's just taking opportunities,
100%. And I hope these players see this opportunity and kind of take it.
Well, I think that leads in quite nicely to the next player I wanted to talk about, Evan Ferguson going to West Ham. Obviously, Mikel Antonio had that horrendous car accident, out for, I think it may be the season and maybe beyond, obviously. Wish him a speedy recovery. But Evan Ferguson needed to go get football. He's reuniting with the manager in Graham Potter that brought him to the Premier League. And he's had a really difficult time as well.
Yeah, fully agree. And I'm surprised, to be fair, neither of our clubs have actually made a bid for it, because he's someone I suggested it. I think Solanke obviously is the only option we've got at the moment, but quality player he was about a year and a half ago. He was being talked about for 100 million moves. I was saying, listen, that's the closest thing I've seen to Harry Kane since then in terms of ball striking, hold up play.
Interesting.
He was very complete in my opinion. And then, as we've seen with so many players, injuries, then a loss of form, then new signings coming in. Welbeck having the rejuvenation of a lifetime. Joao Pedro coming in. He's just been very unlucky with a lot of different circumstances. New manager coming in as well and changing the system. So he now needs to get back out there and remind everyone who he is. And I think a club like West Ham, it's almost been the impossible mission for them in replacing Antonio anyway.
They try it every year,
like
man.
every year they've broken the transfer market to get someone in and say, Antonio, this is the season, we're done with you.
Scamacca, Fulcrum, who else? Hal there, oh my
names, God. They've spent money. And every single time Antonio says, I ain't going nowhere. And this time, unfortunate circumstances have kind of taken him out of the picture. Someone needs to come in and step in there. And I think, as you said there, Graham Potter, they've got that history together as well. He's almost like the perfect guy to give him that bit of confidence again. And I think West Ham will be a more attacking team in this second half of the season. We've already seen in the first couple of games, they've already turned a couple of results around. I'm interested to see how West Ham do under Graham Potter.
Yeah, we did a space on X earlier with a fan from every Premier League club, and they were talking about the improvement that Potter's instantly got out of Lucas Paquetá as well, who was having a really poor season until his arrival, so that's nice to see. Bit of breaking news, it's not the biggest bumper, but Jeffrey Schlupp has joined Celtic from Palace. Here we go. It's a straight loan, no buy option. Obviously, they didn't get Kieran Tierney in the end. That looks like it's going to happen in the summer. I don't think so. So I think Schlupp is going there as the left back. So let's see whether he can, not reinvent himself up in Celtic, but play regularly. You've seen Kasper Schmeichel's impact there, etc. Celtic had a really interesting window with Kyogo leaving as well.
Jota back as well too.
Jota back as well, for sure.
Good one.
Liaz, I know you take a little bit of, big interest in European football. I mean, one move to the EFL is Marcus Edwards from Sporting going to Burnley. Is that a move that a lot of Premier League clubs could have potentially gone for?
I mean, again, opportunity, right? The January transfer window is all about opportunity. And when you see a player like Marcus Edwards, who I think everyone can admit, he has talent. He's a talented player. He was struggling to get minutes over at Sporting. I mean, you know him very well, obviously Spurs Academy, but he was struggling to get minutes at Sporting. And I think Burnley looked at it and said, oh, none of you guys want to take a crack at him. Yeah, we'll take him on board. What's there to lose? And this is, again, I'm going to bring it back to United. This is where I find the frustration, because it's a loan. Like, you don't lose anything. You just bring another body in for 6 months. And hopefully for him and for Burnley, he can help them on their promotion push. And I think if he does, they're signing a talented player. I don't think Burnley have really seen too many players of the ilk of Marcus Edwards. Now, for him, it's all about kind of putting it together into performances. But as I said at the start, I don't think anyone can question the natural talent that this guy has. He's shown it on occasion at Sporting that he can really change games at times.
I think even in the summer and in January, he was linked with moves to Palace. So I always thought he was like a Premier League level player and he could come and make a difference for a team somewhere there. I think for Burnley, that's a coup, because even if they do get that promotion, that's a ready-made player that they can sign on in the summer and gives them a bit of quality onto the youngsters that they signed the last time they came up. So listen, good move from Burnley, and I think for him, he just wants to get back out there and play first team football because he hasn't been getting much out of Sporting.
You're seeing this from the Championship a lot, though. Huh? They're starting to bring in a few of the bigger names. I mean, obviously, you guys brought in
Enzo.
Yeah. They were linked to Adingra earlier today. The Championship is now becoming a league that can actually attract players that are playing in Europe's bigger leagues.
It's a top 10 league in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would agree.
I mean, Sunderland, rejected £13 million for Tommy Watson earlier. I was thinking, this guy's barely played so far.
Dude, yeah, how much would you say for Job? Let's talk a bit of business.
What, right now?
More than you can afford.
We're doing our own deals here on the Sky Mobile Transfer Show with 11. Yeah, for you guys, out of the question right now. But I do think he will. Whether we go up or not, I think he is probably the player that is going to leave this summer. I think we'll keep hold of Rig for another season. I think he should probably stay for another season given his age, but Joe Bellingham has really elevated his game this year. I think maybe Spurs is maybe a too big a leap right now, but a club like Palace...
You'd be surprised.
You'd
be surprised.
Who were linked to it.
15 for 14, come on!
But I think a club like Palace would be a really good move for Joe. Totally, we'll see what happens there.
Got the Sunderland segment in.
Yeah, we did. we did. I was waiting. But the Adingra move doesn't look like it's happening anymore, sadly. Let's talk about a player that has called time on their time in the Premier League in Jorginho Fuad, going to Flamengo. The time, he only had 6 months left on his deal.
Is it an immediate transfer or is it preliminary?
Immediate, yeah.
Fair.
Yes.
Wow, they let him go.
I'm surprised because I always thought when he came into the Arsenal team, he always offered a little bit of something. They always looked a bit more fluid and attacking when he played at that base of that midfield. And he was always like a good deputy. Like he never really skipped a beat. And moving back to Brazil's the interesting one because I always thought maybe one more dance in Italy and,
he's embracing the roots now, man.
But now he said, motherland, I'm coming back. So fair play. I think Flamengo's a huge club as well. So fair play to him.
I'm surprised because I was reading this morning that it was going to be like a pre-contract to join at the end of the window.
I'm double check.
Yeah, because I'm surprised Arsenal would let anyone go at this point. I know he hasn't been playing as much, but the fact is he's still a body, and I think he's also much needed experience. Like he's basically an assistant coach on the touchline at times.
Maybe it's time for Dan.
Fuad Liaz, you keep me straight.
There you
he's
go,
joining
man.
in June, guys.
There you go.
Arsenal fans,
Okay.
do not worry. He's still at the club.
I was going to say that didn't make much sense from Arsenal to let go of a player like that. Yeah.
Crazy. Although it does kind of suggest that if they're happy to let him leave definitely this summer, that maybe the Zubimendi deal is going to be pushed over.
1,000%. 1,000%. Yeah. I know Zubimendi will be a terrific move for them.
We wait for. Come on, man.
No, I think Jorginho, the experience, the leadership that he kind of provides for that team, it's invaluable. I know he isn't as impactful on the pitch as he was a few years ago, but he's a big player for them in the dressing room.
I was just about to say, I think off the pitch is where he adds a lot of value, and he's one of those players that doesn't strike me as he doesn't mind being on the bench.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
I think Arteta talks about him as his brains on the pitch as well. He's a real
they've
quiet
spoken
leader.
about him potentially being a future manager.
I was just about to say, perfect.
Feels like it. All right, guys, before we wrap up, I just want some crystal ball predictions about Man United and Spurs' rest of the season. Thought I can see you hard at work with your crystal ball. Where are Spurs finishing? Do you win a trophy? If so, which one?
That's the real one, the second one.
I'm trying to see. Can't see the top half. So we'll scrap the league. Let's ignore that one for a bit. I can feel a cup though.
Can you?
I can taste some silverware.
You're unfamiliar with that taste, aren't you?
Yeah.
I think that's the tuna sandwich.
Is it the batteries? I would dream of the Europa League, if I'm honest. I think a European trophy, straight route to the Champions League. I think the league gets kind of neglected, whereas I think a League Cup doesn't maybe do as much. It obviously gets us into Europa League and it's a silverware. I really want the Europa League, and I'm looking at the teams in there. United is looking like the other strongest team potentially in there. We've already beaten them twice this season. Come on, boys.
We got you next up, by the way. Huh? We got you next weekend. Huh?
Hey.
Don't talk too soon.
I wouldn't write off Lazio as well. I wouldn't write off Athletic Club.
You're talking about us like the strongest team. I'm looking at Lazio.
Let's
concerning.
Hey, Milinkovic-Savic ain't there no more. Immobile ain't there no more, baby.
Leo, same question to you. End of the season for United, what do you see?
I don't need a crystal ball for this, man. I don't need to do that. It's performative act, man. Allow it. I think Man United are finishing in the bottom half. Like, what can you expect when you have a window like this, when you have a team as weak as this, when you have a board that doesn't support their manager in a time where he desperately needs it? I don't see United finishing above 10th, to be honest with you. I think in the Cups we will ultimately find teams that are better equipped than us, that are stronger than us. And I see a really disappointing end to the season. I wish I wasn't saying this. I honestly wish I could be talking about United with some positivity, some optimism. But how can I have any optimism at this point? I genuinely see bottom half.
Guys, what a note to end on, but there are still 5 hours left of the transfer window this January. Make sure you are following all across Sky Sports News, all our platforms. We'll try and keep you abreast of all the latest transfer stories. And thank you so much for watching the Sky Mobile Transfer Show for today. Remember that with all the transfers going on between clubs this summer, it's never been easier to transfer your network to Sky Mobile. All you need to do is text PAC, that's PAC, to 65075, and Sky Mobile will do the rest. Massive thanks to Leo's, massive thanks to Fuad, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.